I'm coming to you from Eugene, Oregon today with beautiful weather. I think Kovejan has brought the Southern California weather to us. We have sunshine here, which is a rarity in Pacific Northwest. I don't know, Kove is that powerful, I think,
Oh, definitely
bringing
not.
weather. But anyways, it's a beautiful, beautiful weather. And thank you, all of you, for joining us for this talk. Kaveh, of course, is an architect. I'm going to read a bio of him. But actually, before we start, I wanted to ask you to mute yourself if possible. Please mute yourself if you have any questions. Let's wait till he's done talking, then we can raise hands and ask questions. If you're shy, you can put your questions in chat and we'll address that. So I'm going to read Kaveh's bio before we start. Kaveh Arbab is an Iranian-American Zoroastrian and the founder of BNDL Architect Inc., a Los Angeles-based design studio specializing in high-end residential projects. He holds a Master of Architecture from UCLA and lives in LA with his wife and daughter. Kaveh's work is deeply informed by his interest in the architectural legacy of ancient Iran, particularly the spatial and symbolic dimension of Zoroastrianism. His research explores connection between sacred geometry, cosmology, and the built environment. Through his platform at Kaveh_history, he shares original narratives that celebrates Persian heritage and the enduring relevance of Zoroastrian thought. Gonna let someone in. Yeah, definitely check Kaveh's Instagram page, Kaveh_history. It's wonderful. Every time I go there, I learn something new. So definitely check him out. Kaveh-John, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. And thanks again, everyone, for joining. I know most of us know each other here, so I think I'm looking forward to a nice group discussion about this subject. I'll share what I've been researching and looking into, and hopefully I can learn from everyone here based on your feedback. I have an introduction that I'm going to kind of like loosely read. Um, and then I'm going to get into kind of a more conversational flow. So at any point, don't feel shy to interrupt and ask questions. I think that would probably even help the discourse move forward. So, and thank you, Rebecca, again for the introduction. Yes, I'm an architect in Los Angeles. I'm I've been here for since 2009. Um, and when I was younger, I had a chance to visit Iran twice once when I was 15 and once when I was 17. And my trip to Iran completely changed my life. Before that, I I was trying to figure out my identity as an Iranian American, and I grew up in Pittsburgh, where there's not really much of an Iranian community. So it's a bit like confusing. And when I went to Iran, everything kind of made sense, and I realized, I'm an Iranian, and that kind of sparked my interest in architecture, going because I got to go to Persepolis. Um, and just seeing that, these stones that my ancestors had put together, 2,500 years ago, are still there for me to see and connect with and walk through the spaces that Dariush and Xerxes designed and built. And for me to kind of for that to be able to like kind of trigger an ancestral memory and remind me of who I am 2,500 years later, thousands of miles across the, from coming from thousands of miles across the world. Um, like I said, it completely changed my life. And I decided that I want to be able to contribute architecture to the world. Um, and so far I'm doing that on a small scale with houses and stuff. I hope to increase the scale and build longer lasting projects. But in the meantime, I feel that I can also contribute to history and to future generations by exploring our own history and documenting it and making revealing connections that I see in it. Oh, and hi everyone that's joining. Um, Hi Bahram. Um, and so I wanted to begin with the end, um, with the idea of the Dogma. Um, at first glance, the Dogma might appear a bit strange to an outsider. For those who aren't familiar with the Dogma, it's in Zoroastrian tradition, which is still practiced today in India. When someone dies, their body is brought to this circular structure. And you can see this illustration here. Within the circular structure, there are rings. And so the bodies of dead men, deceased men, will be placed in the outer ring. Women will be placed on the inner ring, and middle ring, and children on the innermost ring. And that corresponds to scale, right? Um, smaller on the inside where the ring is smaller to bigger on the outside where men are generally larger. Um, so at first glance, the Dogma appears simple, a circular elevated structure where the bodies of the deceased are exposed to sunlight and vultures. Um, but beneath this ritual lies one of the most profound cosmological ideas in my opinion, any ancient religion. The Dogma is not merely a place to dispose of the dead, it's a diagram of the cosmos, a symbolic threshold where material dissolves into the spiritual. Um, and to help us understand this, we can turn to the concepts of Manog and Getig in Zoroastrianism. So, Manog is the invisible, eternal realm. Um, it's ideal. That's where Asha exists. It's the domain of light, truth, and cosmic order. And like a blueprint, it defines the laws and forms that structure all existence. Uh, Getig is the visible, tangible world of matter, change, and imperfection. It is not evil but incomplete. Its purpose is to be brought into alignment with Manog. Um, all moral and spiritual progress happens in Getig, guided by the light of Manog. The circular geometry of the Dogma reflects eternal, unbroken perfection of Manog. Placed on a high ground and open to the sky, it visually and ritually returns the soul to its cosmic source. Um, Yet the actual burial occurs in Getig, this world, uh, where according to purity laws, we need to prevent the contamination of the elements, earth, fire, and water. So the vultures will come and consume the flesh of the deceased and return that flesh to the ecosystem of the earth from which we borrowed that flesh. So our souls, um, which transmit from Menag, come to Getig and borrow from the earth to exist in this earth. And when we die, we go to the Dogma, which basically serves as a portal or platform to return our souls back to the cosmos, to Menag. And if you can imagine being inside of the Dogma, the walls close you off from the physical world and point you straight up to the cosmos, which are much more representative of the spiritual world. Um, And I just think that's such a it's something like I said, something that may seem strange at first when you actually understand the meaning behind it is actually quite beautiful. And to me, now that I understand the concept, it almost seems like the most sensible way to deal with the deceased. So here's a floor plan and the aerial view. Now, um, I was showing you earlier this 3D model I've been working on. So this is Ardashir's temple in Perusavad. Sometimes it's referred to as a palace. I'm sure that it may have served as some type of living quarter, but the architecture clearly indicates that it was a fire temple. Um, uh, so at the center of the temple, we see we see the use of this sacred geometry and its transformation to Getig. Okay, so let's go into here. So um, in the typical Sasanian fire temple, which this served, I believe, as the main precedent, you have a dome above, which follows that sacred circular cosmic geometry, and then it then translates to a square cubic base, which shows the relationship um, and between Minog and Getig. We want to be able to emulate the cosmic order of Minog and translate it into Getig ourselves. That's our role here on Earth. Zoroaster himself says that our role is to renovate the Earth, which is a very architectural term. So architecture in Zoroastrianism is extremely important because we're renovating the Earth ourselves every day to reflect the cosmic order, to reflect Asha from Minog, to help translate Ahura Mazda's mission here on Earth. Um, and so here we can see some photos of the actual structure. And here's the floor plan. Okay, so here's the pond that we saw outside, and then that central temple here. And you can see the circular geometry that's open to the sky, very similar uh, to the Dakma. And then it translates down to the square geometry at the base. Now, that translation is coming from the ethereal open space of the cosmos to the hard reality of the surface of the earth that we live on, which can be divided into a grid. And this is something that the Egyptians understood as well. Um, and so we see that it's to me, it's such a beautiful poetry that we see this translation of the two realms within this space. Now, that transformation occurs with just like this amazing geometry. It's known as Chahar Tak in Farsi, which means four arches. So you can see they're also referred to as squinches. So you can see, right? You can see the moment where it translates from the circle to the square here, and that is negotiated by the Chahar Tak. It's like this visual representation of that relationship, which I think is
Could I
very beautiful.
could I drive you in a shuttle? I'm on Zoom.
Please unmute yourself. Thank you.
No worries, no worries. Um, and so like let's just go back here. So right, so there's this very clear geometry that was replicated throughout the Sasanian Empire. Okay, so the Sarvastan Palace, which was created by Bahram V, follows the same organization and geometry. The Niasar Fire Temple, again, follows the same exact geometry. You can see the Chahar Tak here in this temple as well. You have the four walls, all with arches, and then the dome above. Um, and this is seen in multiple fire temples throughout the Sasanian Empire. Um, and something that you may find interesting is that a lot of our Zoroastrian temples after Islamic conquest were converted to mosques. And that geometry still exists in mosques today. So the Jame Mosque in Isfahan follows the same exact geometry. You have the circular dome at the top that then translates to the square base through the Chahar Tak. Same with the this mosque in Yazd. Sorry, I put the same name twice. Again, the circular dome, square base, Chahar Tak, and even with the vaulted doorways on the sides that we see in Ardashir's temple, right? Um, Now you might say, well, no, this is Islamic architecture because of the pointed arches. Well, that's also not true. The pointed arch existed long before Islam and was employed by Zoroastrians. So the Shapori Bridge in Loristan, Iran, and then Pole Doktar um, in Loristan as well have vaulted arches. They were built by Shapur. So there was integration by Iranians in Islam later of these two elements, but they both come from Zoroastrian precedent. Now, let's go. Well, actually, before I get there, now, um, physics and science continue to back up Zoroastrian philosophy and theory. So, the ideas of Manog and Getig in modern physics uh, can be seen in different theories, such as the holographic principle, which suggests that our 3D universe is a projection of data stored on a 2D surface, like a cosmic hologram. So Manog being the underlying informational field encoded at the boundary, and then Getig being the 3D projection we experience. Um, there's also quantum field theory, which describes all particles as vibrations in invisible quantum fields. What we call matter is really a surface event, an emergence of something deeper. That also parallels the idea that Getig is an expression of Manog, made visible through structure and the law of Asha. String theory proposes that reality is shaped by strings vibrating in 10 or 11 dimensions, many of which are hidden from our perception. Um, just as the dogma reveals only part of a cosmic process, Getig is only a localized sliver of the full cosmic architecture. And going even further into our scientific understanding of the universe, the Big Bang, in my opinion, is the first overlap of Manog and Getig, and it happened with a spark of fire. I mean, it's technically plasma and other elements. It's not technically fire, but it's similar to a spark of fire. And I believe that is represented in the architecture of the Sasanian fire temple. The fire being that spark, being that overlap between Manog and Getig happening within this sacred geometry of the dome and the cube. So this is my 3D model. So a section cut through the model. So you can see that relationship with the hole at the top to connect to the cosmos and to also receive sunlight, the square base, and then that spark happening at the nexus of all of that. And from that spark, as we come out of that temple, that central space, we then enter the vaulted arch of cosmic creation, right? So now that spark is projecting into the void and materializing itself in the cosmos. And as we come out of that projection, then we finally come to the creation of life, to the living world, to planet Earth. And so I think it's just this beautiful metaphor for the world and the reality that we live in. So this temple was built in the 3rd century AD. Hello. This temple was built in the 3rd century AD. The other temples I showed you were built later on in the Sasanian Empire, for example, the Sarvastan Palace and Nyasar Fire Temple. However, the precedents for this sacred geometry in Iranian Zoroastrian architecture go all the way back to the Bronze Age. Okay, so this is Tagalok 21, which is in Turkmenistan. Now, a little bit of history of the formation of Proto-Iranian peoples and Proto-Zoroastrian peoples. Back around 2000 BC to 1700 BC, these nomadic Indo-European cultures known as the Andronovo and the Sintashta, who, they invented the wheel. They were nomadic warriors. They were pastoralists. They herded, cattle and goats and sheep, traversing across this big flat Eurasian plain, indulging in rituals. They were like these wild warriors, right? Very big guys and women as well. Around that period from 2000 to 1700 BC, they began to migrate south into what's known as the Bactria Margiana Archaeological Complex, or BMAC, which is in modern-day Turkmenistan, northern Afghanistan, Tajikistan. And the BMAC was a more sedentary culture, and it had a lot of, Neolithic farmers from the Iranian plateau who had formed very advanced civilizations here. And so these Indo-Europeans began to mix with them, and this mixture formed the advent of Proto-Indo-Iranians, who then began to migrate into the Iranian plateau and beyond, and also into the Indian subcontinent. And that's kind of like the cultural and genetic origins of the Iranian peoples. And there's a very strong continuity between these early Proto-Indo-Iranians and the later Iranians of antiquity, such as the Persians and the Parthians. So this mosaic of this griffin is from Goner Tepe, which is in Turkmenistan as well. You can see the footprint of that development here. And this griffin mosaic is from Susa, built by King Dariush. You can see the plan here. This is, I'm sure you've seen these soldiers from Susa. Now, you'll see that these two mosaics, although over 1,000 years apart, are nearly identical in form. The expression on the eyes, virtually the same. And I apologize for the low resolution images here, but the pose of the legs, virtually the same. The shape of the wings, virtually the same. And he also has the horns, which you can't see as well, but they're there. It's almost identical 1,000 years apart. And who knows if Dariush actually knew of this specific mosaic. He may have, he might not have, but what it tells me is that there was an extremely consistent development of Iranian art and architecture from the Bronze Age into the Iron Age. And so going back to Tagalok 1, this is one of the first examples, or maybe the first example we have, of a fire temple. So you have the main fortification and structure at the center, and then on the peripheral, where you see this red arrow pointing, you have a circular temple which served as a fire temple. And this was before Zoroastrianism. It was Proto-Zoroastrian, you could say. And so that circular geometry as a portal to the spiritual world existed, like I said, in the Bronze Age. And then we jump ahead past the Achaemenids and to the Parthians, and we see the Parthian ceremonial complex at Nisa, and they have a very similar architectural organization with their temple. So their temple also sat as somewhat of an appendage to the main structure. It's on the periphery. It's separate from the activities of daily life, of the living world that we live in, and also has the circular geometry. So they kind of go outside to the peripherals of their complex to worship and connect with the spiritual world. And that, again, that separation is over 1,000 years. But there's this very consistent architectural paradigm um, across the ancient Bronze Age Indo-Iranian peoples and the Iranian peoples of antiquity. Here's a section diagram of that temple. The archaeological remains of the temple at the base, you can see that the walls were slanted in, which tells us that that temple was a dome structure. And this was built by Mithridates, who expanded the Parthian Empire to its greatest extents up until that time. And here's some images, some rendering. Here's the ruins of Nisa itself and a rendering of what it looked like. The temple structure would have been back here. And here's the footprint of Tagalog 21. You can see the floor plan here. And this is the temple would have been out here. And you have to excuse me for jumping around a lot, but it'll all make sense. So we have that circular geometry, right? So where does the square geometry come into play in Ardashir's temple? Well, we do have a very significant precedent. And also this serves as a precedent to the three domes that you see in the Ardashir temple. Okay, so this is Dahan-e in Sistan, Iran. It was built by the Achaemenids. This served as a form of a fire temple. There were three sacred fires in the center, and this is where Zoroastrians came to worship. Then there were a number of ovens around the perimeter for cooking. Now, some historians have argued that no, this wasn't Zoroastrian. Okay, it wasn't Zoroastrian because there's animal bones and animal remains found on the grounds of the temple, and so clearly they were sacrificing animals, which is a pre-Zoroastrian tradition, and Zoroaster himself clearly spoke against the tradition of sacrificing animals purely for the sake of sacrifice. But what those historians kind of fail to consider is that Zoroastrians feast oftentimes when we celebrate and worship. So the idea of the Gahambar, right? A Gahambar is a feast, a seasonal feast, where we come together and celebrate life and reverence for Ahura Mazda. And so, to me, I think it's very obvious that this simply served as a ceremonial center and a temple, just like our temple in California. It's a ceremonial center where we feast, and it's also a temple. It's still the same organization today. So to me, it's very clear that this was a Zoroastrian place of worship. So you have the three temples at the three sacred fires at the center, right? And so what Ardashir did. Now, when Ardashir came to power, Iran was in a very troubled state. The capital of Ctesiphon had been sacked by the Romans, by Septimius Severus, a huge embarrassment. The Parthian Confederacy was falling apart. There was a lot of internal strife. There was, we were coming out of civil wars. And so Ardashir's father, Papak, overthrew the Parthian ruler or Parthian governor. He might not have been Parthian, but he was ruling for the Parthians in Persis. And then when Ardashir became king, he ended up consolidating the Parthian Empire into the Sasanian Empire. Now, the Parthians, prior to him, had still held on to a lot of Hellenistic traditions and motifs, but Ardashir believed that he needed to make he needed to make a very Iranian empire that purged Western traditions and solely focused on Iranian traditions. So what he's doing in this temple, he's going back, to these he's going back, 2,000 years before him to this tradition of the sacred circular geometry that we find in Nisa, that we find in Tagalok and the Bronze Age temples. And then he's then creating a synthesis between that idea and the and an Achaemenid precedent. So he's in a way architecturally unifying northern Parthian concepts with southern Persian concepts into this beautiful composition. So not only is it touching upon ideas of Manog and Getig and our existence and the universe, but it's also unifying Iranian architectural history. And because of the rigor and the thought put into this sacred design, that's why I believe it was able to last as such a definitive model throughout the course of the Sasanian Empire. And so here I made this timeline. So Tagalok being all the way at about 1800 BC, Dahan e Goleman being around the time of Cyrus and Dariush, Nisa being around the 2nd century BC under Mithridates, then moving forward to the Sasanian era of late antiquity with the Piruzabad fire temple. And then before that fire temple that Ardashir built, he built this structure, which is very similar in concept. And you can see the plan. It translates the difference between the circle and the square, not only vertically, but in plan as well. So this is also a very advanced structure that is often underlooked. And so what else? Yeah, I think that covers the main ideas that I wanted to go through here. I think it was, I guess we've been going for about a half an hour now. This is the 3D model of the temple here, and I will kind of put a bookmark here and open it up for conversation with you guys.
Thank you so much, Kovajon. Wow, I learned a lot. As Dr. Mackey says, this is the points you discuss is just rarely we talk about that. I never thought about the connection between Dachma and the cosmos. And I feel like it has relationship to solar system, even in a way, the circular and another circular that you showed. It reminds me of that. But let me see if anybody has any questions. I have some questions, but I thought I saw, I don't know, Louis had a question, I think, as usual. He's first. I open it to question. Oh, Anthony has a question too. I don't know who was there. I thought I saw.
Yeah, I was there for a while and I wanted to let him finish.
Yeah, okay.
Oh,
If
sorry,
you wanna, go ahead and ask, and then after that, Anthony, we'll get to Anthony.
Okay, one thing that I thought was striking to me, you probably know I'm working on a kind of a temple or a shrine
Yes.
that's incorporating a lot of ancient Zoroastrian mathematics and cosmology. And one thing I thought that was extremely striking, the difference between the Islamic version and yours is they forgot the most important part for me of the shrine. I call it a light shrine now because we can't make fire. So I'm creating something that I call a light temple. And it's mine, so I can call it what I want. And where I'm making it for Zoroaster, but it's my creation. They don't have that. And to me, that's an essential portal because in the design that I'm doing, I have an altar right underneath the opening that represent Amispentas coming down. The merge between I don't know these words that way, Kanag and Menej, the astrophysical, whatever. And they block it in Islamic. I mean, what the hell?
Yeah.
I mean, they block the most important part, which is the link to the cosmos.
Yeah.
And in creating this thing, I'd love to spend some time with you sometime, Kaveh, because the amount of mathematics and what I did different, I don't have a dome. I have three pyramidal shapes, all of the golden ratio, and they're all oriented north, south, east, west. And I was wondering if their temples also do that. For some reason, I wanted to do that to get that orientation exactly north, south, east, and west. And I noticed in the bigger pictures that when they had this, it looked like they had some sort of deliberate orientation.
Um,
That maybe,
I'd like to speak to a few things you said. No, our architecture is a bit different than the Egyptians, right? We're not aligned perfectly with the cardinal directions. You can see here's the north arrow on Ardashir's temple here.
right?
So, the sun is rising from this angle here, and it's coming into the archway at an angle. I've been trying to understand the significance of that myself. I'm not sure I've been able to come to any conclusions. I'd love to hear other people's opinions on that. And then as for the light, I'm so glad you brought that up because I wanted to touch upon this as well. This is a photo I took of a Mithraeum in Ostia Antica in Rome.
Mhm.
And so many of us may know that Mithra is an Iranian god, right? The Romans took the idea of Mithra from the Persians. And it's god of light contracts, and Mithra was incorporated into Zoroastrianism from pre-Zoroastrian ideas later on in Zoroastrianism. But they took the idea of Mithras from the Persians, and they also tried to replicate the concept of our architecture as well. So that opening in the dome to the light, where the light comes in and brings in enlightenment, is also used in these Mithraeums. So they did get some of that concept, but they missed some of the other things like the circular geometry in plan. But I think that's a really awesome point.
Yeah, that's also the importance of the roof structure I found was important because I put in the golden ratio as the angle. So when you look at it orthogonal, it's like a pyramid, but not from the perspective of the ground. It's from the perspective of above. And it's four oriented golden ratio triangles in structure that are supported on four very large 8x8, or it's trying to do 9x9 posts at 9x9 separations. They're big Western red cedar posts that support the whole structure. And then that structure goes down three feet in a concrete thing. And I'm doing my best to make a resonating portal, if that makes any sense.
Absolutely.
But I'm
It's
trying
so
to get that going. And it seems like it's working.
I can't wait to see it.
I think Anthony had a question and then Caleb. Am I correct? Yeah, Anthony, go ahead.
Hi, Kaveh. So, I actually I've followed your Instagram for a while, and I've really tried to ingrain myself not only in my culture, my history as Phoenician. I'm Lebanese myself, my mom's side, but also in the Persian side. My girlfriend, soon to be fiance, is from Afghanistan, and her roots trace back to Badakhshan or the BMAC, which a lot of people you may have seen on that map.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, and the BMAC civilization also very influential to not only Alexander's reign. If my history is correct, one of his wives, Rukshana, sorry, in Persian, was also, I believe she was Bactrian. She was Sogdian Bactrian, they said. And I was just wondering, so how can we, my question really is, Kaveh, what is the best way for any Middle Eastern person to trace their roots, regardless of their Afghan, their Iranian, their Lebanese?
Oh man, that is a loaded question. Maybe, you know, I can speak, the best way I can answer is by speaking about my own journey. Um, I mean, for me, I feel that I'm very fortunate because we have living Zoroastrians here in Southern California, right? And if it weren't for them, if it weren't for the California Zoroastrian Center, for Mitra and Fariba and everyone in this amazing group, I would have a lot more trouble connecting with that history. I mean, they gave me a copy of the Gathas, which, you know, completely changed my life and made me really understand my roots. Um, Unfortunately, a lot of our history has been erased, especially in the Middle East. So we really have to dive deep to find the fragments and piece them together and put those stories together. For me, it's a lot of it is material culture. It's architecture. It's mosaics because there's no denying that proof, right? It's material. There's no debating it. That exists. And so I go back through these artifacts, through these ruins, and try to piece together the story of my ancestors to better understand how I got here and my own existence. Um, and you know, Phoenician culture, I'm no expert on Phoenician culture myself, but I know that there's a vast array of that type of material information.
Mm.
Your fiance or girlfriend from Afghanistan, I mean, Afghanistan for most of antiquity, um, was, you know, as important a part of the ancient Iran as any other region. And even, you know, before antiquity, like Zoroaster traveled through Afghanistan. Um, he
I
may,
believe he was from Afghanistan,
yeah, he
actually.
may have even been from Afghanistan. But I think that something that I wish is that, you know, Afghanis and Iranians would be able to much more come together over our shared history. So hopefully that answers your question. I'm
Yeah,
kind of
soon. And hopefully too, right? Like for us, obviously, I came from a Maronite family, actually. We're Catholic, but I'm the first one in my family that actually reverted, as the Muslims would say, to Islam. And that was contentious because I went to so many of the, for example, the Woman Life Freedom protests. And I had a lot of my friends saying, "Oh, so are you turning your back on us?" And I said, "Well, no. I'm just for peace in the Middle East. You know, I don't like the media will try and impose these sides on us. And
Mhm.
it's like, I'm just for, the freedom for women in Iran and Afghanistan, and also for people all across the world, right? In the Holy Land, as you've said, I've heard, in the Middle East. And I think we're too divided. I think I'm starting my own business soon, hopefully, called Phoenicia Media, named after my ancestors, the Phoenicians. And I want to give the Middle East, all the way from Iran to Lebanon and everywhere else in between, the
That's awesome.
media and the news it deserves, and the history probably it deserves too, hopefully. So thank you
That's
for
awesome.
inspiring me.
I'm really glad to hear that.
Yeah.
And you know, one thing is that under King Cyrus and the Achaemenid Empire, I think he was really able to help the Middle East flourish by giving people the freedom to practice their own beliefs, traditions, religions, and not impose his own beliefs and religion on the entire region. And I think by allowing a diversity of indigenous ideas, we'll be able to achieve peace much more quickly.
Hopefully. Well,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank
Tashakkur.
you. I think Caleb was next, and then we have Akbar. Caleb, go ahead, and then.
And
Okay, all
Steve Williamson also is
Oh,
right.
Steve too. Hey,
Yeah.
good to see you, Steve. Yeah.
Okay, so I wrote down like maybe 4 or 5 questions. I'm not going to ask them all now, of course. There's a couple of things that people said while I was waiting to talk that I wanted, since the discussion, I wanted to also talk about. The first thing was about cardinal directions in architecture. And I think, and it's not my area of expertise, but I think Iranians would tend to build their architecture based on the needs of the environment. So, for instance, if there's a certain road, they might, or a certain kind of landscape, they might put a building that would look most aesthetic when you're coming up to it, rather than making sure it meets the cardinal directions. Because I don't think they were trying to make sure that, I don't know, obviously not, but that Ardashir's soul would get into, the afterlife, which is the big concern of the Egyptians. The other thing was about like Eastern Iran and Zarathustra's homeland. I think it was what's his name? He was an archaeologist, Franz René. He put Zarathustra in Rava, which would have been the Afghanistan portion of Badakhshan. So, if that's how Badakhshan is pronounced. So I think that's probably pretty good, but it's really hard to say. It's based on some tenuous evidence. What we can say for certain is that the Yaz culture, which is superseded BMAC in the whole area. The picture you showed is a little bit inaccurate. He was somewhere. This one's from Wikipedia. I think I don't know why it puts Yaz at the same time as BMAC. All the archaeologists say that Yaz is the Iranian culture that superseded it. But anyway,
it's the best image I could get.
Yeah, it's a good image. It's the one thing. And I recently had somebody I was arguing with me based on this image, and I was like, anyway, okay. So what I wanted to ask about was, you started off with the Dakhmas, and they have a very particular architecture, their style, very circular, that kind of leads up to the heavens. And then you have this almost kind of reverse, at least what I was looking at, what you're showing, this reverse system with the fire temples, where it almost seems like you're giving yourself back up to the mental, spiritual realm, versus the fire temples almost channeling it. That's at least what I saw, but I'm sure you probably know better. So I'm curious about the similarities in the play on architectural themes between the two.
Could you clarify, like, just
So I was curious about the architectural connections between the Dakhmas and the fire temples.
Oh, I wish I had like a better diagram. So basically, what I was trying to communicate was that the Dakhma facing up to the heavens is, a direct portal and connection to Manog, to the spiritual realm, to the cosmos. And then Ardashir then takes that geometry, creates a circular dome, which also connects us to the cosmos through the opening at the top of the dome, letting light in, as Louise was discussing. But then grounds that idea. He then literally through physical structure translates that spiritual realm into the physical realm in which we exist. And, we exist on the hard surface of the earth, which can be divided up into a grid, right? Into squares. And so we're literally making the cosmos touch the ground, and we're seeing that transformation from sky, Manog, to earth, Gitig. Does that make...
Yeah, I appreciate the clarification. It's a very fascinating idea.
Okay, let's go to Akbar. Please, go ahead.
Hello.
Hello.
Thank you for your good presentation. I am Akbar Jamali. I have a question, and if we had time, I later ask more questions, but for no. Herodot says that Iranian religion, there is no temple in Iranian religion. So temple is something absolutely foreign to the original Iranian religion. Hegel, in his metaphysics, discussed this and say Iranian religion has no temple. The temple is in the heart of individuals. So again, Herodot says that Iranian worship water and fire and some element like that. For Iranian, the holiness is a spring, water, and in some cases fire. So my question is, and another thing that I want to emphasize is that in Iranian religion, unlike Greek, Roman, Islamic, or Egyptian religion, a temple in itself is not a holy thing. For example, Mecca in Islam is in itself holy. It's believed that the stone came from heaven, or Jewish temple, or Egyptian temple. But in Iranian temple, the holiness comes from something like the spring or the fire or something external to the building of the temple. That's why in Iranian civilization, we don't have very complex temples. So my question is this. When Iranian start building temples, when temple become important in Iranian religion, this process when it starts.
Mhm.
Thank you. If I had time later, I'll ask more questions.
Okay, thank you for your question. Yeah, no, I think that an architectural temple has always been present in Iranian religion. Like you mentioned, the fire temple. And so like in my talk, I was going back to, 2000 BC at Tagalok 21. This is the first fire temple that we know of. It was a circular temple. It was a fire temple. It predated Zoroastrianism. But then, like I said, that idea was translated into a Parthian fire temple. Here you can see a depiction of what they believe that temple looked like on the inside, with a fire altar at the middle. And then you also have this outdoor temple at Dahane Goleman. And then, of course, back to the Sasanian examples, which we have many, many fire temples in Sasanian culture. So I would say that we can trace the beginnings of this trajectory all the way back to the Bronze Age, and then there's a very consistent history of architectural temples in Iranian and Zoroastrian culture all the way through the modern day. We still have fire temples down the street from me. So I would say that Iranian religion does have physical temples, although yes, there's probably a much stronger connection to the natural world in our traditions.
And what about water? Is any temple is close to water?
Yeah, we do have.
Yes, actually, the Hane Goleman had water courses running through it.
Yeah, we do have, like in Sintashta that Kaveh pointed out also, we had water temples that with water in center.
Yeah,
So,
when
yeah.
I'm structurally creating, I made a moat around the perimeter
Yeah, oh, Louis did
that would gather water in rain and encircle the shrine or / temple with active water coming off the roof. I designed it so it's carried down into a moat about 6 inches wide, about 4 inches deep, so it'll fill with a ring of water in the rainstorms. I thought it'd be cool. I wanted to bring one point. I don't mean to interrupt, but I wanted to address Anthony and everybody here. What we're doing is we're trying to remember, and we're taking history has tried to ignore and erase our memory of this ancient wisdom that was very powerful, extremely powerful, and in fact, it's symbolic in shutting out the light in the temple. And what all of us here in this room, I'm a white guy from Southern California, right? But for some reason, I'm thrown into this, and willingly. But we're here to remember the ancients, pay them respect, bring it back, revitalize it, reactivate it, and bring it forward again. Because I feel this in my bones that there was an entity they wanted us to be forgotten forever. And I have some 4-letter words for that I won't use. But we as a body of people right now, we're engaged in remembering these ancient, powerful things that history is trying to forget, but we're really annoying. We don't leave very easily.
Thank you, Luis. I 100% agree. And also to answer Akbar's question, this image that you see here on your screen, this is a temple in Iran called Shakshak. And it's a cave. And here's some other images of it. And it's said that a Sasanian princess was escaping the Islamic invasions, and Ahura Mazda opened up the earth for her and created this cave for her to hide in. And there's actually a natural spring that runs through the cave. So, like you were saying, yes, there is a tradition of a connection to the natural world. I mean, this temple itself is a cave, right? That's a natural formation with natural water running through it.
So
Did I
in
lose
case
my-
of internal and external, for example, if pyramid is external and Egyptian temple is internal, we can say Iranian temples are internal. The holiness is inside the temple, not the outside of the temple, or the inside of the temple is more important than outside. For example, Kaaba, outside is important than inside. Can we say in Iranian temple are internal?
We can say both of them is true. Both the inside, which is a sacred space, and the outside, where the sacred elements are. So the whole thing, we don't say this area is only sacred if you step out. It's not. The whole environment is sacred. The water, the plants, the air, all the other elements, the sacred Zoroastrian sacred elements are outside the temple too. So both of them, I would say.
I pray myself in the openness of my backyard, towards the sun, for example. That's one of my temples.
Yeah. Yeah, we're building one in middle of a forest, the same, and by the element. Did Steve, did you raise your hand, sir? I don't see you raising. Did you have a question, Steve? No?
I had a comment, not so much about the architecture, but this is the best discussion of ancient architecture that I've ever seen, and I really appreciate you putting all this together. It's really good. But I had a question about history, or actually it's a slight rant. Let me go on a 60-second rant. Okay, many of you have seen this movie, Alexander, by Oliver Stone. Now, it's currently the dominant American view of Alexander. And his marriage to Roxanne is covered in this edition. And in the commentary, Oliver Stone talks over and over and over, why would Alexander marry this hillbilly? He talks about her in very low-class terms, this woman from a hill tribe, a barbarian woman. Why would he marry her? Now you dig a little deeper into Roxanne, and there's this 800-page book, Roxanne, a Romance, that A.J. Cave wrote in 2008. And you find and also it's not just in this book, but in the history of Alexander's invasion of Afghanistan. The name Zarathustra's name is all through there. The one local general who was able to stand up against him, I can't pronounce it, Spitamenes, but it's a very close rhyme with Zarathustra's family name of Spitama. And when you delve into Roxanne, you find out, oh, gee, that's her family name too. So Alexander was not marrying some backward country barbarian princess. He was marrying a direct descendant of Zarathustra, and it was in Bactria. And had he been able to unite the East and West like that with her as a direct descendant of Zarathustra, history might have wound up very, very different. But we don't hear that history. I mean, this movie is currently where most Americans get their views of Alexander. And Oliver Stone in the commentary goes over and over why, he can't figure out, why does Alexander marry this hillbilly woman, but yeah, so history is just not the history has been lost. That's the significance of Zarathustra, and we tend to see him just as Zarathustra, but there's a marriage of his daughter at the end of the Gathas. So I mean, there's a family lineage there, and Roxana was part of it, and I think that's why Alexander chose to marry her. Anyway, end of my rant. Longer than 60 seconds. I apologize.
No, that was great, Steve. I had no idea. Fascinating. We should get together for coffee. Me and
yes.
me and Steve are,
yes.
I think, only Zoroastrian in Eugene living,
yeah.
and Louis, three of us. Yeah, definitely. I think Caleb had a question.
Yeah, it's a quick question, but I was wanting to, since Steve brought up, a comment on that. Bactria, the city, not the state. I mean, it had already been a organized state since like the 900s BC. We don't know how exactly, but archaeologically they have a lot of pretty sizable cities. But the city Bactria in the Achaemenid Empire was 300 hectares, or at least that's how they found it, and then nobody was willing to pay them money to excavate the whole city. So there's a whole Bactrian city. Same thing with Kandahar, but that's the same size as Athens. So it would have been a very well-developed big city. So, but my question actually was about the domes. I remember reading a couple different things that a lot of the Sassanid buildings just have stucco with designs and painting on them. And same thing with Persepolis. The original person who dug it out had said that they found some painting residue, but then when later people tested it, they couldn't find anything. I was curious if the domes were painted in a similar manner to the the one you showed with Ardashir's temple, if they're painted in a similar manner to the Islamic mosques that you showed.
Can you guys still see my screen?
Yes, you're in your files.
Okay. Let me pull something up here. Because yes, the bricks were plastered. Okay, and I'm going to show you how we know that. Let me pull this up. Okay, photos. Okay, yes. Sorry for the, oh gosh.
Can I ask, I'm sorry I was late, maybe you covered this. Did you get some kind of PhD out of doing this project? Because it sure deserves a PhD or something.
No. I have a master's in architecture, but we never learned anything about Iranian architecture, and I learned way more about Iranian architecture and architectural history after my education. Caleb, this is from Ardashir's temple. You can see that it was smooth troweled plaster. Um, and the lintel above the doors actually follows the same geometry from Persepolis. Let me see if I can find an example of that.
I know what you're talking about, by the way, the example from Persepolis.
Right, so you can see that uh, the fluted lintel above the doors, right? You see that there, and here as well. And so Ardashir literally copied that. So like I said, he was doing his best to unify all these different components of Iranian architecture in his one masterpiece. But yeah, so it was smooth plaster above that was troweled over the bricks, which is like similar to how we do homes in Southern California, right? We do the wood framing, the sheathing, a lath, and then do smooth plaster over that. So you can like the masonry behind the plaster doesn't have to be exactly perfect, right? As long as it gives you a flat enough surface to plaster over it. And my assumption was that it was painted white just based on like this, things that I saw like this. Um, but in the Parthian example that I showed you, Nisa, it actually was proven that they had purple and red pigments within the dome. So that space was like a purple and red interior, which is the same as the Darash Kaviani, right? Our friend Barham has behind him on his Zoom screen.
And I
So
think you had a question. Oh, go ahead. Go for it.
Yeah.
Interesting.
The I the interior of for all we know, the interior of Ardashir's could have been purple and red as well. We just don't have any significant proof of it. I'm trying to get in here. Excuse me. But something that I noticed while constructing this 3D model is that the form of the dome and the Shahar Tak with the square around it actually emulates the Darash Kaviani. So so you can see the hole. This would be the center point would be the hole, right? At the top. And then you have the four dots and then the ellipses on the corners. So it's actually a fascinating, striking resemblance between the two ideas, and I wouldn't be surprised if he did that intentionally. And that could say that maybe it was purple and red, like the Nisa example.
Great. RJ John, you had a question. Go ahead, and then I'll ask my question.
Oh yeah, well, I wanted to say, yeah, I mean, I think it was excellent how you really pointed out the architectural design and how like the circular structure, the dogma really reflects like the really actually if you really think about it, it really reflects like the ethereal sphere of things because ultimately everything goes back to Mazda's light and Mazda's light isn't just merely some light that you shine and it just gives light in the darkness, but it's also what gives creation. And I really how just love how beautifully you put things together to showcase that not only is light, being projected out the universe, but through that light you're seeing creation. And I know this book is not necessarily canonical, but it goes back to the Bunda Hashin and chapter 1
I
stanza
stored
2.
my background.
Oh, sorry. Stanza 2, where it talks about how Mazda first created the light. From it came fire, and from the fire came the ether, and that ether gave rise to all the elements and all the creation. And it also reminds us too that as individuals, we also are creation, or we are fashioned from the fire. And it's also reminding us that we're all meant to be in this world as the agents to spread the light. As we had our conversations before, we mentioned how this existence, the Getig is really still a project. It's still becoming, it's still expanding, and it's not yet reached its perfection. But with the light expanding, and with our very actions in this world, with our good thoughts, good words, and good deeds, as you know, these individual flames as we are, yeah, we're really bringing about that final renovation of the world, as they call Fashogard. You know, Zarathustra said in the Gathas and Yasna 31:3, he says that, you know, each of us has an inner spiritual fire. And the beauty of it all, like as you mentioned, everything is always constantly expanding. You know how everything in this universe is vibration, nothing is stagnant, nothing is just merely, you know, as it is. All things are moving, all things have vibrations, as you mentioned about the quantum field. So it really just showcases how the fire temple not only represents what creation is and how creation started, but it really just reflects how that spark of light, you know, gave birth to all existence. And from those sparks of light, all creation is expanding and allowing this physical existence to finally realize Asha. And so you see like this beautiful poeticness in Zoroastrian architecture and then our actual practitioner of this religion. So I just wanted to say that, yeah, it was a very beautiful presentation, how you're able to piece this together, and it shows you how all things just come in full circle.
Thank you, Bahram. I always love your insight on things. It's always so clear
Oh, thank you so much.
and enlightening. And I owe a lot of you know, my knowledge and wisdom to you. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, RJ is always so knowledgeable. I have one
Thank
question
you.
before Akbar. I brought my hand down, but I had a question about that griffin, John. It was really interesting that you showed it from the, I think, Bronze Age or whatever. I always thought that these griffins and all these statues that they came from Assyrian influence
Wrong.
from Babylonian, but then it's so funny now. I think they took it from us. It's coming from east to west, not west to east. Can you elaborate a little bit about that? It was fascinating. I had no idea.
Yeah, this is a very recent, relatively recent discovery from Goner Depp. So, yeah, so I mean, up until recently, we would have assumed that it came from west to east, but I mean, this is the earliest precedent of this type of image that predates Assyrian culture, right? I don't have much more to add to that, except that, you know, what we thought the Achaemenids and Iranians borrowed from Mesopotamia, in many cases, it's actually came from ancient Indo-Iranian traditions.
Mm-hmm. Including the talk about cuneiform that coming from Iran, from J-Rof actually, if I'm not mistaken, rather than from Sumer. So that's interesting, development that we see.
Which one was it?
The invention of cuneiform, we found they are going back before Sumer. So it looks like the writing doesn't come from Mesopotamia, and it comes from Iranian plateau, from Jirov. So I don't know if you've heard of
I
that
didn't know that. I'm gonna look into that as soon as we get
Look
off
into
of
that. Some years ago, there was a discovery which was even older than
this. Okay.
Mesopotamian cuneiform. So that's something to look at. But Akbarjon, go ahead.
Regarding the decoration of the Zoroastrian temples, we have a stone that has some metaphysical aspects. La'l Badakhshan, lapis lazuli.
Hmm.
Lapis lazuli in Iranian metaphysics has been emphasized too much. For example, if you read any Iranian poetry, you can see, yeah, this stone is in Iranian metaphysics has been emphasized for its value, for its metaphysical aspects. And we know that in Islamic mosque they use this stone. So I want to know if we have an evidence that in Zoroastrian temples this stone has been used or not.
Lapis Louis, yes,
And we know that in the best lapis lazuli in the world is from Afghanistan, is from Badakhshan.
correct.
Badakhshan. So,
Yeah.
did you see something like this?
Lapis Louis is found actually in this mosaic, and Susa as well.
In Zoroastrian temples, no?
Not that I'm aware of. In the actual temples, no. More as decorative elements outside of the temples and other architectural spaces.
Okay, so it's about 1:20, everyone. I think we're gonna wrap it up. If there are no more questions, if you don't mind. Thank you so much, Kaveh-Jan, for coming. We learned a lot from you always. Again, if you came late, please follow Kaveh. He has a wonderful Instagram page, Kaveh_history. Follow him. He has a lot of interesting stuff, videos and reels about Zoroastrian art and architecture, ancient Persia. Our next Zarathustrian Assembly's next event will be on Sunday, July 20th at 11 a.m. Pacific. We have a virtual hangout. Just come and hang out with us. We're just going to have an informal gathering. If you have any questions or just want to chat and meet some fellow Zoroastrians, come and see us. And also check us out on our website, zoroastrian.org. Thank you very much, and we'll see you next time. Thank you, Kaveh-Jan. Thank you, everyone.
And I just want to say thank you to the assembly.
Yeah,
Of course.
it was a
Yes,
pleasure
thank
having
you.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. See ya.
Mhm.